Adrian, I've told you 5 or 4 times, we're doing Stone Temple Pilots, and it's coming up right now on the world's kindest music show, Courtesy Listen. Welcome to Courtesy Listen,
the podcast that explores an artist's entire catalog.
We'll listen to every studio album
and any other essential recordings,
sharing our thoughts along the way.
Some of those albums will be good,
and some will be bad, but they all deserve
a courtesy listen.
All right, well, welcome back. Hello, Adrian. Good to see you again.
Tom, good to see you. Happy to be here. We made it to episode 2.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? No, we really appreciate everyone who watched our first episode. We got some great feedback on it, and happy to see that people liked it. And so now, as we said in the last episode, we both agreed on Led Zeppelin, but now we're taking turns picking bands for each episode, and this is my turn. We picked Stone Temple Pilots. I picked Stone Temple Pilots, I should say. And I am wearing a Stone Temple Pilots t-shirt just
very nice.
to give some indication of my level of interest in STP.
We all knew this was coming. Like, this was going to be a choice.
So, as we always do at the beginning of the episode, we will each kind of share our overview, our opening thoughts of Stone Temple Pilots. So, Adrian, I will let you go first. What are your thoughts on Stone Temple Pilots? Are they a band you were aware of growing up, and what do you think of them now?
Sure. Stone Temple Pilots, I was aware of them, yes. Heard them on the radio, kind of mashed them in with all those other early 90s rock bands. If you would have put me on the spot, 2 weeks ago and said, name 5 Stone Temple Pilots songs, couldn't have done it. So definitely a band, as I got listening, was like, oh, I know this, but not by choice have I listened to Stone Temple Pilots aside from a radio play or something like that. So definitely my level of fandom is very different from yours.
Yeah.
You have been a fan from the beginning, or how did this all come to be for you?
I was aware of them from when Core came out in 92. Well, maybe not right in 92, but I remember Plush getting heavy radio play in 93. And I really liked the song at the time. I can remember there was a roller skating rink, and I was in 5th, 6th grade. There was a roller skating rink down the street from my house where we'd hang out at, in the evenings. And Plush was a song that we would roller skate to, at least in my mind, frequently.
The 22-year-old guy who was working the DJ booth at the roller rink really liked it. Probably it wasn't for your benefit; it was for his.
Yeah, probably so. But once I got into 7th, 8th grade, they quickly became my favorite band, I would say at the time. I loved STP. And it's interesting because a lot of the music I liked back then, I enjoy now for maybe nostalgic purposes for what it makes me think of, memories and such. But I think I like STP more now as an adult than I did as a child even. I think I appreciate their music in a different way. So I think that's interesting too.
Sure.
But the final thing I need to say at the top is that my Scott Weiland, I think as a child was the celebrity whom I most wanted to be. I wanted to look like him. I wanted to, take on his affectations and such. I wanted to sound like him. I thought always thought he had an amazing voice. There's something just about his sense of style and everything. I always adored Scott Weiland, R.I.P. But yeah, so that is kind of where I'm coming from as an STP fan. But with that, I think we'll get into the albums. So their first album was Core, which came out in September 1992. Grunge is in full swing. And Adrian, let's hear your Core thoughts.
Yeah, my Core thoughts, listening to this now, I definitely picked out a few tracks that I recognized. The cover of this, it should have just been a flannel shirt, right? It was this is just grunge. You hear this and you're like, oh yeah, this is grunge from the time that grunge was big or coming into its own. As I started this out with the first track, Dead and Bloated, which is an interesting track. it did make me chuckle because it was like, props to anybody who can get past the first 20 seconds of this song with this like no music, just this well, maybe there is music, you tell me if I'm wrong, but just this grovelly voice, and that maybe drew you in. But me, I would have been, me in 1992, I would have been like, nope, I'm done, and that would have been the end of my Stone Temple Pilots appreciation. So it's just interesting to me that is the kind of intro they want to make of themselves, with that album. I like some of these tracks. I wanted to like some of them more. I wanted to like Wicked Garden, like the music of it I really like, but then when I took a look closer in the lyrics, I'm reading some of these lyrics, I'm like, yeah, I'm not really enjoying this as much as I did before I took a closer look. So
yeah,
that's kind of that was my impression of this album from today. Don't really have an impression of it from then.
Okay. Yeah, you touched on a number of things that I certainly will expound upon, I think.
Good.
Core was not the first I keep saying Led Zeppelin. Gosh. Core was not the first Stone Temple Pilots album that I owned. We'll get to that. But I got it pretty early on. I mean, I definitely got it while I was still in probably ninth grade. It has never been my favorite Stone Temple Pilots album. Very, very different from the music they would go on to make. And of course, at this time, they were being very much lumped in with Pearl Jam, just I think due to how Scott was singing at the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the critics just hated STP. I mean, they just loathed this band. I think it's a great album. I really enjoy it. One thing I'll say for Stone Temple Pilots is that they've always, since their inception, they play very cohesively. Now, is part of that because the bass player and the guitar player are brothers? Possibly, so you imagine that they have been playing together since they were young. Mm-hmm. But they just, that first track, Dead and Bloated, I mean, it's a pretty abrasive track, but it there's a groove to it that it's the kind of thing that like Rage Against the Machine would have like rapped over. You know what I mean? Like it's very much got a groove going on, and that's a constant throughout their catalog. I feel like they play very well together.
Yeah.
I also, I mean, you mentioned Dead and Bloated. I love that vocal intro. You'll know that.
What about it? Like what?
I just think it's such a cool. Like it's so recognizable, at least for me. I always thought it would make, and I'm probably going to make this like a feature for me every episode. I always thought it would make a great wrestling entrance theme song. Wow. Just because like you hear that and like 2 seconds in, you're like, I know exactly whose music that is.
Yeah.
So I really like that song. I like Wicked Garden a lot. I like Sin is okay. It kind of drags, but it kind of shows you like where they're going with that weird interlude towards the end. Like they would make music that sounded like that. Creep's a fabulous song.
Yeah.
Very bluesy, because Naked Sunday is the best song on the track. Naked Sunday is an amazing song. And you mentioned Scott's lyrics. Lyrically, Scott is a very mixed bag. He definitely...
That will continue to be throughout most of the albums, right? Yeah.
I think doesn't always know what he's trying to say, but he's got moments. And that part on Naked Sunday on the chorus when he does that, been waiting for a while to meet you, for a chance to shake your hand and give you thanks for all the suffering you command. Like that's cold as hell.
Yeah.
That is, that's an assertion that is made a lot, I feel like, in rock music and, rebelling against one's maker. But the way that he sings that, I always thought was really powerful.
Sure. Was he the main writer of their lyrics? Did
Scott
write all their lyrics?
So he actually, I read that he shared with his bandmates that like he didn't feel like he was able to sing someone else's lyrics. Like he was not comfortable singing lyrics written by another band member, and they all seem to really respect that. But yeah, good album, not my favorite. So with that leads us to less than 2 years later, June 7th, 1994. They put out the album Purple, their sophomore album. And at this point, from what I've read, Scott has discovered heroin. They are not really talking to each other as a band. Like the other three are, but
That
them
fast.
and Scott are already on the outs.
Like one album, 2
Yeah,
years in, and
I
they're
think
already
his
announced.
his drug problem was bad at that point. Scott also got married right around this time for the first time. So tumultuous time for this band, and really, I'm dying to hear what you thought of this album.
Yeah. Well, obviously, this is the album that has most of their like big hits on it, most of their big radio tracks. So me listening to this album, I was like, okay, yeah, I know this one. So I really enjoyed Purple as an album. Big Empty, I know is not like one of their top tracks, but that's a radio track. That's my favorite radio track that I recognize. Interstate Love Song, Vaseline, all these good tracks. Overall, probably because I do recognize it from back then, this is an album that I really like and enjoy, and I could see myself out of this selection going back to listen to as a whole album. Other albums, they may have a song here or there that I still will return to, but this one I could put on and listen through.
It's incredible that this came out less than 2 years later, because the jump in sort of musical ability, in songwriting ability, is staggering.
Well, and the sound, they got it felt like a little bit more commercialized, a little more
Yeah,
friendly to the general public.
They immediately got away from the grunge stuff, and they said, okay, you're going to compare us to Pearl Jam, like we're going to go way,
Not anymore.
Yeah, and they really branched out on that album. The opener, they have great openers. Meat Plow's a great opener. Vaseline's awesome. Loungefly, track 3, it's got like that kind of looped guitar thing. Did you recognize the looped guitar part? That da, 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 da.
No. Tell me,
That
what
was
is it?
that was the intro to MTV News for many years.
Oh, well, listen, I had no cable TV as a child.
I
so
forgot.
I'm
I forgot.
not as
Sorry.
I'll play it for Andy, and I'll say, Andy, what is this? And we'll see how fast he gets it. But
I'll be like, Tabitha Soren! No.
yeah. I'll report back next episode. Remind me. We'll talk about it.
But, of course, Interstate Love Song, is one of the best alternative rock singles of the entire decade. I Will Die on That Hill. Great song. Still Remains. That has always been one of my favorites. Just a great rock love song. I remember listening to it at 14 and being like, learning many things from that song, and Big Empty, as you mentioned, Big Empty's an incredible song. Like, I can't believe they wrote that. So that's a song that makes me feel like I'm in danger. Like when I listen to it, like it fills me with a sense of dread, but in a good way.
Well, it starts out that like pedal steel.
Yeah.
It starts out with, oh, it's so good. I love that.
It's amazing. And that bridge with the Conversations Kill, which would have been my other choice for a podcast name.
I'm surprised
Very-
that wasn't part of the cold open here, right? That
Yeah,
could've
I
been
should have said that.
backup.
Very different vibe than Courtesy Listen,
Yeah.
Conversations Kill, but
Yeah.
awesome song. Like I said, lyrically, you get both sides with Scott.
Yeah. Was this the year that they were voted, like, they were in some poll, magazine, the best new band and also the worst new band? Was that around this time?
That's funny.
I believe that was
I don't-
94.
Maybe so.
Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
The best, reader poll. What's the best new band? What's the worst new band? And they topped out on both categories.
That's funny.
And it's interesting, like you can definitely tell they're getting more mainstream, whether for
Yeah.
good or for bad, I guess, with this album.
A couple more quick things I want to say about this album was, first of all, I just want to mention Army Ants for a second, which is the not the penultimate track, because there's the secret track, but Army Ants, we mentioned drum solos last time. That drum solo coming out of that little musical interlude, that is what I'm looking for in a drum solo. It's like 5 seconds long. It's awesome. Comes out of nowhere. That's what I'm looking for in a drum solo. Eric Kretz kills it. And very understated drummer. Like, he doesn't show off. He does exactly what is necessary for the song.
It doesn't have to be 8 minutes long for it to be
Right.
meaningful.
And also, I got to shout out Brendan O'Brien, who produced most, if not all, of Stone Temple Pilots' early work. just the production on those albums is so good, and like the drums. Last time I talked about John Bonham's drum sounds and what I didn't like about it. The way the drums sound on Stone Temple Pilots records is exactly how I want them to sound on a record. And I'll shout out Kitchenware and Candy Bars, the closer. Awesome song, great solo, great crescendo into the final chorus. And then it's got that weird secret song, the 12 Gracious Melodies, that I always thought was hilarious. I cannot find the story behind that song. I don't know if it's Scott who sings it. It doesn't sound like him. It's just kind of got this weird, like, I don't even know how to describe that song.
Yeah.
It's just
well, maybe someone out there
so
knows
odd.
the history and can
Yeah.
fill us in, and we can pass that along to everyone. You mentioned the production. I think that is something on an album that you don't always recognize how good it is until
Yeah.
it's bad, right? So it's like it's taken for granted how tight they played and how well put together they were. And if it was something where the one guy's kind of lagging behind or things are a bit looser, then you would have something to say about it, or it would be more evident. But really, when you bring up the fact of how great the production is, how tight they played together, it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that insight.
Okay, moving on 2 years later to June 1996, we have their third album, Tiny Music, Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop. I have
What's
big
the story
thoughts.
behind that title?
It's I think it's such a neat title, but it is interesting. So I got big thoughts on this one, but Adrian, hit me with it.
Yeah, this one, I thought was interesting. There's a few. You'll have to remind me. I feel like there's one or two kind of radio tracks on this album as well that are still people would know if they heard. That first track, Press Play, just makes me laugh because did they intend for it to sound like a DVD menu song? Because it's just instrumental. There's no vocals. I don't know how long it is. It's short. It's like a minute long, and it sounds like the DVD menu playing in the background, which you may not know this, but there is a Phoebe Bridgers track
I know.
called DVD menu, which I love, and I always joke about. I could listen to that DVD menu track constantly. This one I'll push play to go to the next track. I think they could have started the album with track 2 here. I think that would have been a stronger opening for them. You open with this and you're kind of like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I think the next track definitely had a better kickoff of the album for sure. Again, lyrically, things are kind of odd here. Lady Picture Show, I like the sound of this song, but the content and the lyrics are, again, kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
And then wrapping it up, I really did like Seven Cage Tigers as kind of a close to the album. I thought that was a great kind of way to bring it all together and kind of fade out. It was a good, strong ending to the album. So, yeah, good album. Nothing to me was like crazy standout, whether good or bad.
Yeah, so this was the first Stone Temple Pilots album that I owned on CD. One of my friends got this for me for my 14th birthday in 1996, so like a few weeks after it came out, and I wore this album out. I mean, just had it on repeat, because at the time I didn't have that many CDs, and so this one was always in the Discman. I would rank this as one of my all-time favorite records. Just love this record to death. I like Press Play. This is an album where you like the DeLeo brothers really have a lot of jazz influences, and this is an album where that starts to come out. A lot of bossa nova type of influence. You really get a feel for that here. So the Just Press Play thing's interesting, but or not Just Press Play, that's Aerosmith, but Press Play, yeah. So as far as the album goes, you mentioned Pop Love Suicide. A lot of themes of death on this album. I mean, Pop Love Suicide, obviously, which in 1996, the music scene had really suffered some untimely deaths. So, but that song stands out to me because really got a Led Zeppelin thing going on there with that oh, I really don't know, like the Misty Mountain Hop kind of thing. Which is funny because that song's way so much better than Misty Mountain Hop. But so I like that tune. Tumble in the Rough's awesome. Big Bang Baby was, I think, probably the biggest hit from this album. Great song, great song. The harmonies they do on the bridge are really out there. That's another one with the death, where he's talking about there's a hole in your head,
Yeah. Well, is his drug problem still,
Yeah,
I
oh, he's
assume that
he's still
dealing with
really,
drug problems at this point.
He cleaned up for the recording of this, and they recorded this album. They all lived together in this house in Santa Ynez, California, a big mansion to record this together. And there is a gut-wrenching video for the song And So I Know, which is probably my favorite track on the album. And So I Know is such a great song. That solo by Dean DeLeo on And So I Know, that's a Steely Dan level solo. That guitar solo is so incredible. What an amazing musician. For my money, that album is the best guitar album of 90s rock. Dean DeLeo is just in his element on that whole album. His solo on Seven Cage Tigers is unbelievable. His solo on Trippin' on a Hole in a Paper Heart is just, I've listened to that solo 300 times, and it always boggles my mind. Robert, too, though. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, do you think these other guys, Scott Weiland is like a name that's recognizable,
Yeah.
right? Even to not a fan. These other guys, you could have said all their names and I would have been like, nah, I don't know that guy. Does he live down the street from me? I have no
Yeah.
idea. So do you feel like they really got the credit that they should have gotten?
No,
Or am I just
don't.
under a rock?
I don't. So I established last time they play the drums. I also play bass. In fact, at this point in my life, I would probably say bass is my main instrument. Robert DeLeo is my favorite bass player. He's incredible.
There's so many good bass parts
Yeah.
through all these songs, all these
Yeah.
albums. Yeah, definitely.
And I think I think if you're a bass player, you probably know him. You probably know how good he is. Dean doesn't get anywhere the credit he deserves and I'll say, like, when I was young, a lot of his solos didn't really make sense to me. They did on this album, but like some of his stuff on Purple and on Core, I did not understand what he was doing. And now I kind of do. And like, I can't explain this as well as, because I don't have the music theory knowledge, but Rick Beato, who does great videos, you should watch all his videos on Stone Temple Pilots, because he's done a number of like what makes the song great, where he'll talk about, the chord changes and like, sort of these jazz style solos Dean does. And it really helped me understand like why maybe at first I wasn't really, some of it sounded atonal perhaps to me,
Sure.
but now I can appreciate it a lot more.
Gotcha.
The last thing I'll say about Tiny Music is one of the tropes that I really like in rock music that people don't do enough is when somebody's soloing and then they go back into the chorus or the singer starts singing again, but the solo's still going on underneath the vocals. And they do it twice on this album. They do it on Tumble in the Rough and they do it on Lady Picture Show. And a Lady Picture Show, especially when he comes back in with the "She doesn't know her name," and he's still just wailing underneath
Going
that.
at it, yeah.
So cool, man. I love that.
Awesome. I'll have to go back and listen for that for sure. That's great.
So unfortunately, after this album came out, Scott's drug problems, legal problems, really caught up with him. They had a rough few years. The DeLeo brothers kind of did a side project for a minute. And they finally got it back together in November of '99. They put out their fourth album, which was aptly titled Number 4. So, Adrian, let's hear your number 4 thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was funny actually coming off of our Led Zeppelin episode that, you have like 1, 2, 3 untitled for Zeppelin, and here we have real title.
never
real
thought
title,
about that.
Real title 4. Like,
That's
Where does
hilarious.
this come from? Where does this come from? So, I really enjoyed this album a lot. They had a really strong kickoff with Down. Those first few 3 or 4 tracks are pretty heavy tracks. I think I would say heavier than the albums previously. And then my favorite track from this album is definitely Sour Girl, which I listened to the album, said, oh yeah, Sour Girl's my favorite album, and then later reading about it was like, oh, this was like the most, I guess, commercially successful track from that album, or known track from that album. And I was like, dang, I gotta go choose a different favorite song, but I'll keep it. So what I really like about Sour Girl was it has this kind of like slow, kind of flowing melody, but underneath, as you're listening to it, you have, like you talked about, the bass player. You've got this great bass lines running through that are not slow and are not flowy, but are really, moving. You have like all these nice percussive kind of add-ins. It really gives it layers, and I appreciate music songs with layers. So I really enjoyed that one. The other song I really enjoyed on this track is "I Got You," because it has this pedal steel that's reminiscent of Big Empty. So listening to that track, I was like, oh, this sounds like that song about driving fast in my car, and I was like, oh, that's them too. Hello, duh, right? So those are my two tracks from 4.
"I Got You" is a gutting song. When he sings that, I got you, but it's the craving for the good life that gets me through when my mind begins to wander to the spoon. Like, good heavens, what a...
Yeah.
Like I said, Scott's a mixed bag, but man, when he gets it lyrically.
Yeah. Well, for him to be so open about that,
I know,
that's really,
I know, that is really raw, Great song, though. I was in a record store a couple months ago when they started playing "I Got You," and I was just like, I am going to spend some money in here today. I'm not going to buy this album because I can never find it on vinyl. Spoiler alert for when we come up. But yeah, no, what a great song. So I will say in 1999, I did not like this album. I was looking for Tiny Music Part 2. And this album is definitely not Tiny Music Part 2. Mm-hmm. This probably should have been self-titled because it's the old like return to form. We're going to get back to rockin'. We're going to get back to our roots. Like, that's how I've always kind of felt about this album. It has really grown on me over the years. Down is very much like Dead and Bloated. I think it's kind of the same, like, it's definitely, I think, feel like written to be an opener, it has the whole, like, pleased to meet you, nice to know, all that stuff. Great song. But in addition to, like, sort of this hard rockin' thing that they're getting back to, there's also a lot of, I feel like, Beatles influence on this album. You got like Church on Tuesday.
Listen, just wait, because as we move, I have more Beatles that I pulled out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will agree with whatever you say, because somebody's ripping off the Beatles as we move into these
Church on
albums.
Tuesday, very Beatles-esque. I feel like the harmonies on Sour Girl, extremely Beatles, sounding to me. What else? I like No Way Out. They were kind of doing like the new metal thing. Like, really, Scott was actually singing on a lot of new metal albums at the time. He sang, he made guest appearances on like Limp Bizkit albums and stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Because I guess they needed to bring in somebody who could actually sing, like on occasional songs. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was unkind.
Apologize to Limp. Come on.
Yeah, apologies. But yeah, they were kind of leaning into this new metal thing really before it got going full. I mean, it was already kind of going, I guess, at that point, but it hadn't like really picked up speed as the most popular genre of rock yet. What else? Glide is the one track that really does sound like it could be on Tiny Music, so I always liked that one. Couple more points I wanted to make with this album. With like Sex and Violence is probably the worst song in the STP cat. It's up there. It's a terrible song. I don't like that one. I don't like MC5 that much. I really feel like STP does not write great upbeat songs. They are a mid-tempo band, and even their harder songs are better when they're mid-tempo. I just feel like that's where that gives Robert space to kind of do these intricate bass lines and stuff.
Right.
So that's kind of their sweet spot. The closer, Atlanta, man, that sounds like a Doors song. I mean, he sounds like Jim Morrison on that record. It sounds like the song Love Street by the Doors. It's a great song.
ripping off the Beatles. Maybe they're
Yeah.
taking a page
Yeah.
from the Doors as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, wasn't the album I was looking for at the time, but I have come to appreciate it. Which now brings us to May of 2001. Shangri-La-Di-Da. So, Adrian, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, this one I could have not listened to and been just fine. I think as the album as a whole. I don't. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of meh to me. You know, like it wasn't anything. Had no strong feelings one way or the other. I did. You're talking about how his lyrics are so raw and kind of so open. Bipolar Bear on this album, where he's talking about these feelings that he's having, but not only talking about going back and forth between these feelings that he's having, but the music in that song is echoing the feelings, and it has these really soft kind of melodic parts and then these really kind of stronger rocking parts, and there's no kind of easy flow between the two. It's fairly abrupt in between the two sides. So I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of pull the music in and kind of express the same thought, but with the music. On this album, we have Song for Sleeping, which is kind of like a lullaby for his son Noah, which I appreciated hearing that song. I know, like, songs about kids. Tom, you don't come across as a big softie, but I think that that one may touch you.
That song, oof, on the right day, man. That song will get me worked up.
Yeah, so those were the two kind of notable tracks for me from this album.
Yeah. So at the time, I mean, I bought this album the day it came out, and I loved it. And
even after 4 was kind of like a letdown, you were still
this album was more what I was looking for. It's got its high points and low points, but this was what I wanted 4 to sound like, I think, because it's definitely closer to Tiny Music. Days of the Week was kind of the big single off of that, and that sounds like it could be, it sounds like the same band who made Tiny Music, so I love Days of the Week. Coma.
Is that the one that made me, it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Days of the Week?
Yeah.
Like Hello the Beatles again, right? Like, anyway, continue. There's all these Beatles.
The track right after that is Coma, and man, that's a fabulous song. That's another one where Dean keeps playing the solo, and he Scott comes in and sings over it, and it's so good. And his Dean's solo is just on that song is just out of this world. Of course, Scott's in his second marriage at this point, so he's back to doing like the love songs. Scott does love songs really well. I think "Wonderful" is an excellent song. "Hello, It's Late" is a freaking that song is heavy, man. Great song. Bipolar Bear is great. And Song for Sleeping, oof, that one hits me right in the sternum. I think this is a really good album.
In a good way, though, yeah.
Yeah, right, in a good way. It's just a very touching song. And of course, to the surprise of no one, Dean plays just a very tasteful solo. So yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed that album a lot. It's interesting to think about kind of what music was like at the time, because it didn't really sound like that. I feel like, because that was the summer of 2001 was the summer after my freshman year of college, and I was just working at Kmart and just buying albums. And I can remember the previous week, I think, I bought the Stained album, which had a million hits. And so you compare the two, they sound nothing like one another. Good album. So now we have a big layoff. STP goes on hiatus for 9 years, and then we come back in May of 2010 with the self-titled album Stone Temple Pilots. Adrian, were they worth? Was it worth getting the band back together?
I'm going to refer to this one like this because this is Tom's T-shirt. This is this album with the peace sign, right? I really enjoyed this album because of this like southern rock. Tom, you could probably guess this southern rock kind of bluesy feel that it had to a lot of not all of the tracks. There were some tracks that definitely felt like they could have been picked up and put on the older albums, and they would have fit in just fine. But you start off with several really kind of twangy, bluesy albums: Huckleberry Crumble, Hickory Dichotomy. Those two have really great guitar parts that they're leaning into that southern sound like that. Cinnamon, I thought, was a really fun track. I don't know what it's about because it has all these terrible lyrics again that are just repeat, like, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Like the lyrics are going nowhere, but I thought the sound of it was really fun. And then this album is where I kind of started, to be like, this sounds like the Beatles. And then afterwards was like, all these other songs sound like the Beatles. But Bagman to me just sounds like a ripoff of Taxman. And maybe it's a very easy comparison, but just the way they enunciate the word and like putting this high stress on both syllables, it was like, okay, this is not just a coincidence for me. But this was a good album. I would listen to this one again. Definitely enjoyed this one for sure.
I'm glad to hear that because I love this album, and another one I bought the day it came out. At this point, of course, I had a career, and I remember I was on a business trip in Long Island, and I still made it to Best Buy the day that this came out. I was driving a rental car. I immediately popped it in the Discman, and I was so happy because I was just, it lived up. And then I saw them about a month later. It's the only time I ever saw them in concert. But they were great, and they played Huckleberry Crumble, which was amazing live. They played Hickory Dichotomy. Both those tracks are so good.
And Scott was alive at this time when you saw them?
He was, yeah. So they were all together. He did seem not sober, which was disappointing. But he was still, he performed well. I think this album, the first 5 tracks are just incredible. Dare If You Dare is another one that if it catches me on the right day, and especially, you got to read the lyrics on that one, but oof. But then, you mentioned Cinnamon and Bagman. I actually think those are the 2 worst tracks in STP's entire, and I love their catalog front to back. In their entire catalog. Wow. I hate both of those songs.
I'm going to
Cinnamon
back to
is
that
just
as we get to the end
atrocious.
Of this list.
Cinnamon in particular, I'm like, what are you guys doing here? Like, that's just, Bagman is just silly. But
it's like you said, they're a good mid-tempo band, right?
Yeah.
And Cinnamon is trying to be like this poppier, kind of more fun, upbeat
I don't know
song.
what they were going for in that one, but
that's why I like it.
It picks back up, and Peacoat is a fabulous song. Always liked that one a lot. And then Maver, the closing track, I Will Ride Hard for that one. That I expected that to be your song because that's basically as close as STP got to recording a Counting Crows song, like with the piano and everything. That is a Counting Crows song. I love Maver. What a great song. But this is just such a great album. It was so neat that even after all this time off, they came back. They still had great musical ideas, and they just put together just a really solid album.
Yeah. Were they playing together during this big break? Do you have any idea? Or for them to come back and to be so well, so tight and right with it, coming back is really impressive.
Scott joined Velvet Revolver and was with them for about 5 years in between. And then Robert and Dean had like sort of another band they tried to do with the guy from Filter called Army of Anyone. It's not really worth checking out, in my opinion. But
is it better or worse than Cinnamon Girl or Cinnamon? Better or worse
Cinnamon Girl's a great song, but no, Cinnamon. No, it's better than Cinnamon. Yeah, but that will bring us to the acknowledgement that the good times could not last. They and Scott were not able to keep this reunion going together, and that brings us to 2013 with the EP High Rise with Chester Bennington of Linkin Park fame. Adrian, what did you think of High Rise?
High Rise, to me, tell me again, why did they put STP's name on this album? Because to me, they're going to go off and they're going to do their own separate projects. He's going to go do Velvet Revolver and this and that. Like this should have been a different project. With Chester Bennington, it sounds to me at least nothing like STP. It's like it's just I don't know. I listened to it and I was like, this doesn't belong. This is weird that this is part of their catalog. It's a fine album, but I think including it just for the namesake, like to me, that's why else would they do it? Just for the name recognition. So, whatever. This one is shorter, right? It's only like 5 or 6 tracks. It's an EP, so there's really not much. For me, there's not much to write home about here. Again, the song Blackheart lifts, just like picks up and plops down that main intro melody line from Get Back, the Beatles. When you listen to that first, the first lyrics to Get Back, Jojo was a man who thought he was a loner, and the first lyrics to this are so similar to me. There was no denying it. I was like, this is a straight lift of the Beatles. So I don't know which one of the guys in the band was the big Beatles fan. Maybe we should dig into that. But this for me,
I don't know.
Take it or leave it.
This is not one that I listened to much when it came out because it had Chester Bennington, and I've never been a huge fan of his work. Nothing, didn't have anything against him, but Linkin Park wasn't really ever my thing. So I probably only started listening to it in the last couple of years. I think it's pretty good, but I'm predisposed to enjoying what the DeLeo brothers and Eric do together. I think most of the album is fine, but I think Blackheart goes really hard. I think that's a great song. The chorus of Blackheart's awesome.
See, I
really
couldn't
wish
get past those lyrics. You need to go back and listen to it.
I need to go back and
again
listen to it. I didn't
It's
pick
the
that up.
same melody line, and it's just that's all I could hear. It was like,
I couldn't help but think, like, what would that have been like if Scott had sang this song? You know what I mean? But from what I've read, I mean, they really had every intention of Chester becoming the permanent singer of STP. And supposedly he had said, like, that was his dream growing up, was to be the vocalist for STP and all this stuff. And it just seems like it, I don't think it was acrimonious, but it just didn't work out for whatever reason. And then, and that was that. And unfortunately, before they would put out another album in 2018, both Chester and Scott Weiland, of course, would be deceased. So 5 years passed from that. And then in 2018, we get a second self-titled album. With new singer Jeff Goot, who I have to say up front before we get to the album, it is uncanny how much he sounds like Scott Weiland. Terrifying almost. He sounds remarkably like Scott Weiland.
did he just win like some sort of send in a tape and whoever sounds the most like Scott is going to be the next guy, right?
He auditioned certainly, and he, I don't know if you read about him at all. He was a contestant and got very far on The Voice before that.
Singing Stone Temple Pilots songs?
No. I guess from what I read, I didn't go back and watch it, but from what I read, his piece de resistance, when he was a contestant, was he did a version of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah.
Oh, okay. So he's got pipes. He can sing.
Yes.
Yeah,
clearly.
Okay.
So what did you think of the other self-titled STP with the butterfly on front?
Yeah. Well, that's funny. I have this butterfly is how I have this listed in my notes. This one, first of all, whoever's letting these guys name these albums needs to, they have too many yes men around them, and they need to have somebody that gives them a let's reconsider. I love the opening to this album. I thought it was a great kickoff with Middle of Nowhere. I really enjoyed that track and thought it was started out strong. 2018, no, forgive me, when streaming and Spotify and all this kind of comes around, back in the day, you would get an album and you would judge the whole thing by how that first track kind of kicked off. But 2018, maybe we're still kind of experiencing things in physical media, maybe some people not, but I thought that was a great start to this. Thought Meadow was a good tune. It made me laugh. The 6/8 makes me laugh because I want to, is it actually in 6/8? I should ask the drummer / bass player if it is or not. But I thought, this was a good album. I enjoyed this. Would listen to this one again for sure.
Yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised when this album came out, and I can remember reaching out to a bunch of my old friends who I knew like STP, and I was like, guys, you've got to check out the new STP album with the new singer, and all of them being like, no, why?
He can't sound anything like Scott. There's
Yeah.
no way. And you're like, actually, yeah, he can.
I agree. Middle of Nowhere is a great opener. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh man, this is
Yeah.
this is something worth listening to, I
All
think.
in.
6-8 is probably the best track on the album. I really like 6-8. I didn't think to like note if it's actually in 6/8 time. It's pretty. I mean,
I
not
think
hard
it
to
is. It
determine
has-
that, but I think it is too.
Yeah.
But yeah, great track. Thought She'd Be Mine is an awesome song. I really liked that one too. Dean is all the way back on Good Shoes. His solo on Good Shoes is up there with all of his earlier work. I noted that there was more Eric Kretz than there was on previous albums. Like he's a little more. He does more than perhaps on previous albums. So I thought that was interesting too. But good album. I mean, whether Scott was on it or not, it's what 26 years after their first album. So no band is going to have the same
Right.
level of musical ideas that they did after that time. So like, yeah, does it stand up to, Purple? Probably not, but very good album and certainly an enjoyable listen.
Sure. Yeah, hardly anybody's. I mean, most bands aren't hanging on 5 or 6 years after
Right.
their debut or after they hit it big, right? So to be hanging on 26 years later is really astounding for sure.
Yeah. That brings us to the final album on our journey, 2021's Perdida. So, Adrian, what did you think?
Yeah, this one, I had to like double check. Did I choose the right album? Is this right? Because this album, for those that had not heard it before, I had not heard it before this. What's up with this album? It's totally different than anything. Mainly acoustic. We have there's so many things in here. We have these female harmonies all throughout, which I don't know, are maybe are scattered here and there previously. You tell me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like they were a really key part of this album, or a key part of some songs from this album. We have pedal steel, we have hand drums, we have fiddle, we have classical guitar, jazz flute, like all these components that had not been on any album prior, that just kind of, were all mashed together in this kind of folksy album. I said that the EP sounded like it should have been a different band. This should have been like a third separate band playing. Now, not to say that it's bad, because I did enjoy this album once I kind of got over my stunned reaction to it. I could see myself listening to this again. I sat down, when I listened to this album, I listened to it straight through beginning to end, and I really enjoyed kind of, the whole thing, the album as a unit, as a whole. I thought Miles Away and Three Wishes were my two top tracks, and they finally, maybe this is because of Scott's demise, unfortunately, but they finally got their lyrical game together, and the lyrics for those two are beautiful. So yeah, I first listening to this was like, what is this? I do not enjoy this, but I think I was too much trying to glom on to all the older albums, and once I kind of released it from that, I really enjoyed this album, and I think I would go back to it again for sure.
Yeah, I was excited certainly when this came out, and I like
Did you race
it.
out and buy this CD as well?
I did not. I
Did you know what was coming? Were there
no. I think it's one of those
whispers
things
that
where
this
I logged in. I think I pulled up Spotify one day and saw that STP had a new album out, and yeah, I didn't know that it was going to be an acoustic album. I really like it. Certainly, it's a lot different, as you said, but the title track is excellent. I didn't know the time. Great song. You mentioned Miles Away. That's probably the album highlight. It's this waltz, which is so different from anything they've done. It also, I am 98% sure that is the only key change in STP's entire catalog. It has that key change at the end.
Interesting.
And I am key changes. Speaking of mixed bags, key changes are a mixed bag in
Yes.
general.
Yes.
One of the things that my mother taught me well is that many times a key change is just used as a way to extend a song without actually like writing another verse or something. You know, it's just an uncreative way to extend a song. But I think it resolves that particular track in a satisfying way. So I like it. I also like the closer, Sunburst, a lot. The band's very restrained throughout that album, but on Sunburst, they really start to let go a little bit, you know, and it's a good closer. They always have good closers, you know. Good,
Yeah.
Pretty constant with that. But so that concludes our album journey. So we will now move on to the enduring staple of this show, top 3, bottom 1.
Top
So
3.
Adrian, I'm going to
I have
ask
to
you,
find my Post-it note. Let's see here.
what is number 3?
Number 3 for me, I think, and I went back and forth on this one again and again, and I could just say number 3 for me was Stone Temple Pilots and leave it at that. Because the 2 self-titled albums were kind of vying for third place, but ultimately we're going to go with this. We're going to go with T-shirt, peace sign, Stone Temple Pilot. Yes, whatever that one, however we want to label that one. That like bluesy album, I really enjoyed that. That would be number 3 for me. Tom,
Awesome.
what was your number 3?
So number 3 for me is Shangri-La Da. I find myself listening to that album pretty regularly and have ever since it came out. I think part of it's just nostalgic and the fact that, you know, I had a lot of time that summer to listen to music and I had it on repeat. And I think it's a great album. It has a lot of range, you know, a lot of different sounds on it, but it all fits together pretty well. So number 2, Adrian.
Number 2 for me is number 4. I really enjoyed that album. I think that kind of heavier rock enjoyed. I really like some of the tracks on there, and I don't know, that one really stuck with me. And I found myself, as you know, Tom picked this and shared with me a few weeks ago, this album. So we had some time to go through and listen to these albums, right? And I found myself, I need to listen to STP for the podcast, going back to listen to 4 more often than the other albums. So I think that, for me, kind of solidified the fact that that was pretty high up on the list. So number 4 is my number 2. Your number 2 is?
Interesting. That's a neat choice. I'm actually kind of tickled that you picked number 4 that high. Number 2 is Purple. I think it's a fabulous album. Really, just like I said before, the departure they made from core is so striking, and just the range they showed, and not just in musical ability, but also in songwriting, and even just the way that the band looked. If you see like how they looked in their music videos for core, you know, and then how much they changed in such a short period of time when Purple came out, it fascinates me, and it's a great album. It's got great singles. It's also got great deep cuts on it, and yeah, one that I have always listened to pretty regularly.
Interesting that Purple is your number 2, which leads right in to my number 1, which is also Purple.
Yeah.
Purple for me is number 1. If I'm going to listen to the band, I'm most likely going to pull up the album with the most songs that I know and can sing along with and enjoy. So for me, it's that one. And good tracks too, not just the words or you've heard them on the radio, but enjoyable songs. So Purple for me is number 1. Number one.
Yeah, number 1 for me is Tiny Music. As I said, it is probably one of my all-time 10 favorite albums. Just a great album. I never get tired of the songs. It's never a situation where I talked last time about how I can't hear Stairway to Heaven with fresh ears. I've known these songs for longer than I've known Stairway to Heaven, and I mean, I listened to Tiny Music on the way home from work today, and it's still just a great album. You know, Big Bang Baby always makes me tap my foot. Great song. I didn't even talk about this but we talked about Scott's lyrics. Sell Your Soul and Sign an Autograph is such a great lyric. Great album. Lot of Zeppelin influence on that one. But they were just really coming into their own. I wish things had turned out differently and that they could have maintained that era a bit,
Sure.
because I think they could have been a lot bigger. I think they could have really had some sustained success if Scott had been healthy and they had been able to keep that momentum going.
Gotcha. Good. Interesting. Well, that leads us to the bottom.
Bottom one.
Straight
Let's
to the
hear your
bottom.
bottom one.
For me, yeah, bottom. High Rise. High Rise is my bottom of the pack. Like that one can be left off, just because I think the EP just seems so disconnected from the rest of their catalog, and everything else I really did enjoy and thought like, oh, maybe this will be that third place. Really, I had a lot of albums jockeying for that third place, but the bottom, I knew exactly who was going to be at the bottom, so that's my bottom choice there. What about you?
Yeah,
Last
High
place.
Rise. High Rise is definitely bottom one. Did I add it? Did I make us do it just so I wouldn't have to put an official Stone Temple Pilots album as the bottom one? Probably. But yeah, it's fine. But nothing else in their catalog I would regard as fine. I would regard everything else as at least very good.
Sure.
And it
Could
would have
you
been a
pick
gutting
another
decision.
bottom? Who's second to the bottom? Who's second to last? Could you choose?
It would have been 2018 Stone Temple Pilots. I like Perdita better. But it would have been tough because I really like that album and I don't want to put it as a bottom one.
Sure.
So yeah, High Rise is definitely bottom one.
Gotcha. Good. Well, one that we agreed on. The
Yes.
first one.
Yes.
And of
And
all
that-
those albums, which I have none on vinyl. We shared vinyl last time. Led Zeppelin, we both had some Led Zeppelin vinyl. I have none, obviously, on vinyl. Tom, which of these do you have on vinyl, if any?
Well, I'm glad you asked if I got it on vinyl. Because I do. I have Core.
Okay.
I have Purple. And of all of them, I have Shangri-La-Di-Da on
Wow.
vinyl. I know. I don't have Tiny Music, and it just got a 25th anniversary repress like 3 years ago. It's one of those things where it's just, I'll get around to buying it. And, as a vinyl collector, you have to have things to look forward to. And I know the day that I buy that album will be a great day. And so I've just been it's one that I have to have.
Will you buy the re-release, or are you trying to track down an original? Was there a press?
Oh no, I want
back in the day?
the repressings of these Stone Temple Pilots albums are excellent. So I have no qualms. No, I don't need to track down the original. Like
Got it.
that's. I never see number 4 pop up. I would absolutely buy it on vinyl in a heartbeat, and I know that Music on Vinyl repressed it a few years ago, but I never see it. So anyway, the one that's going to be tough is the 2010 album. I have to have that on vinyl, and it is not easy to find. So
Right.
we'll get there.
Good luck. To
Okay.
you. Well, I'll keep my eyes open. I'll text you when I see it. Or
I appreciate
buy two
that.
copies. When I buy
Yes.
2 copies for myself, you can have one.
As the host, I get to pick the wild card question. I revealed my adolescent thoughts towards Scott Weiland and how I wanted to really model myself after him. And did you have a celebrity, Adrian, who you sort of saw as this idealized person that you wanted to emulate and try to model yourself after them, either in terms of how you dressed or the affectations that you took on or things like that?
Yeah, I'm glad that you gave me a heads up for this question, because this was a kind of a one not to just pull out your hat real fast. When I was, this was like teenage Tom kind of modeling himself after Scott Weiland, right? Teenage me, no, I don't really think I did then or now. There wasn't anything that really, when you shared this question with me, there wasn't anything that came to mind that popped up right away. However, what this did make me think of was when I was a teenager, was kind of when Natalie Portman became popular, came in, had all these movies as a teenager. And I, in my retail job, working with the general public, was told literally every shift that I worked that, has anybody told you look like Natalie Portman? And that to me was such I either got the Natalie Portman thing, women told me the Natalie Portman thing, and men gave me the Yo Adrian from Rocky. Those were the two things that I got, right? But that was kind of like a weird shadow to be in. I don't know. It was kind of weird. So to hear you say like how much you emulated yourself or wanted to be like Scott Weiland, it was kind of like, oh, I'm glad I didn't fall into that, right? So kind of not really is my answer to that question. How's that? Do you have any more to share about what you were thinking, what you shared earlier about?
Yeah. Well, the only other thing I have
Scott?
the only other thing I have to share is that the only other celebrity that I had like this kind of, that I tried to emulate anyway was Luke Perry. And specifically his Dylan character from 90210, not in the dress or because I was too young or hair or anything like that, but just in terms of like, I think I memorized all of his facial expressions and I really tried to like, if I felt like eyes were on me, I tried to like replicate Luke Perry as Dylan's facial expressions. I still do. Like I still catch myself being somewhere
That's
out in
so
public
funny.
and feeling eyes upon me and like, doing this sort of like vacant Luke Perry, eye roll.
You gotta give me
yeah.
you gotta like give me a little hand sign next time you catch yourself doing that, so I can connect it to this thought. Yeah.
You know when I
that's
do
so
it?
funny.
Walking up at communion, we go to the same church, Adrian and I. I don't know, I feel like there's all these eyes on me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've shared too much.
knew? Who knew?
I do have to say real quick about yours. I know who Natalie Portman is now, but for like the first, 30 seconds or so of that anecdote, I was picturing the young lady who sang that song "Torn" in 1998.
Natalie Imbruglia?
Yes, that's who I thought you were talking
Yeah,
about. And I was
no.
like, man, I don't see it. But yes,
No,
Natalie
no,
Portman,
no. Yeah.
of course.
Like 16-year-old Natalie Portman
Yeah.
and 16-year-old me looked very
Yeah.
much alike, so.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Well, we have a new segment rolling out here where we are going to rank every band, each personally, that we do. And we're going to call this Better Than Led Zeppelin. So we'll start. We only have two bands to choose from. You got to
Yes,
rank
the easiest
one
week.
number one, and you got to rank one number two.
Right.
So Adrian,
For me, take it away. Here we go. For me, number one, Led Zeppelin.
Oh.
Number two, STP. Sorry.
Hmm.
Sorry. What about you, Tom? Let's guess. Let's see.
I will say that as far as in the vast number of bands that we've done in this show's illustrious history, I have to say Stone Temple Pilots are the greatest band we've ever done. They are better than Led Zeppelin. So
I will
sorry,
fight you on that. Yeah.
sorry, Led Zeppelin. Stone Temple Pilots are number one for now. Final thoughts that I'll give. I love STP. This has been a lot of fun, going through this. R.I.P. Scott. I always wanted him to get it together. It always made me sad that he couldn't, because he was a really talented guy. He has a lot of interesting solo work, but I will say in particular, he has a holiday album from like 2011
Oh.
where he does like lounge versions of like I'll Be
We
Home
had-
for Christmas and stuff like that. It's so
We
good.
had to listen to High Rise, and you couldn't throw this
I
into
should
the
have.
list.
I should
Well,
have.
save that for our holiday edition of Courtesy
yes.
Listen. We will
Yes.
do that.
Or he does Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Oh, it's excellent. It's excellent. Any final thoughts on STP?
Yeah, final thoughts on STP. It was really nice to kind of expand my knowledge of their catalog and hear a little bit more of the music and hear a little bit more from you, learning more about the band. I'll definitely be able to kind of call them out now when I'm hearing all this, like the 90s at 9, like, oh, that one's STP compared to some of, all the other bands that they're mashed in with. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you picking that. Good choice. And I enjoyed giving them a courtesy listen for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And actually, I do have to say for the listeners here, Adrian and I are going to see STP. They are coming to our
Yes.
town next month, September. So
It's just about a month. I was gonna say, is it a month from today? But it's a few days off. So
Yeah.
soon.
So we're very excited to see STP. They're one of the few bands that I feel like I actually enjoy meeting because they seem like pretty normal guys,
Yeah.
and it'd be fun to meet them. But anyway, yeah, really looking forward to seeing STP.
Good. It'll be good. And now I know more songs, so that's great. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So the moment of truth is here.
The moment. Listen, okay, so episode 1 we chose together. Episode 2 was Tom's choice. Episode 3 I have chosen and will be revealing to Tom in this moment. He doesn't know. I have had such a hard time on picking. I have probably 15 different artists and bands that I have thrown around. I need like a drum roll, right? I would like us to courtesy listen for next episode, and I know you're going to enjoy this, Tom. There's some on my list that maybe you won't enjoy so much, but this one is a good one. I would really enjoy hearing your takes on My Morning Jacket. So that's
Wow.
what we'll be checking out for next time. I have no idea.
Awesome.
They have a lot of albums. Hopefully not too many for one episode, but yeah, that was like a last minute reroute. But that's what we're doing. My Morning Jacket.
That's a great choice. I can't wait.
Yeah, very good. And for everyone who's enjoyed our first episode, this episode, you can tell we're new at this because we last episode did not ask you to like, did not ask you to subscribe, but we're going to do it now because we realized that we forgot all those things. So if you're enjoying the podcast, like and subscribe, all those special little YouTube things that my kids who watch YouTube all day, they like to go around and rattle off like it's some sort of common knowledge these days. But we appreciate you listening, and we will be back with our My Morning Jacket episode next time.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Thank you, Adrian. It's been lovely as always.
Same to you, Tom. We'll see you
And
next time.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.